Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Sky Lila Experience. Today we have a very special guest, my favorite man in the world, Matt, also known as Secret Agent Dad. Hey, Dad.
Hi, everybody.
Today we're going to ask some questions that a few of you lovely people asked about a successful entrepreneur. Starting off with, what was your first job and what did you learn from it?
I would answer that with three smaller responses because somebody asking that question reminds me of myself when I was younger, asking people what job they did because of the car they were driving. I would ask somebody getting into their Ferrari or their Rolls Royce what kind of a job they did when I was very young, and almost all of them would answer me. So it's similar in a way to what was your first job. Technically, I would say my first job that gave me the experience of what's important, because I'm thinking about the reason the question is being asked in the first place. The first thing that I did, if you want to say job, was actually volunteer. And it was important because what I did was I was a Boy Scout and I was asked to sell Boy Scout calendars. And the winner, meaning whoever sold the most Boy Scout calendars in Canada, got a prize. So what I did was I got boxes of Boy Scout calendars and I went down to the local liquor store and I stood out there after school almost every day, and every single person that left, I would approach and ask them, would you like to buy a Boy Scout calendar? They're only 50 cents or two for $1. A lot of people thought it was funny, gave me $1, but only took one calendar. Nevertheless, over a short period of time, I became the highest selling Boy Scout calendar seller in Canada. So I sold whatever year that was. I was probably 10 or maybe 10 or 11 or 12, something like that. And I realized that it wasn't that hard. And the object of the exercise is it's really a numbers game. And I know people talk about that, especially in sales. But although it wasn't a job, it was more volunteer. The point is still made that to make the sales or to achieve your goal, even though I didn't receive anything from these sales, because it was all going to Boy Scouts Canada, the point is still true, that it was simply a numbers game. That as long as I went down there almost every night, just around dinner time when everybody was going to get their wine or their beer, so many people were going in and out of the liquor store, and all you had to do was say the same line over and over again. And some people would buy for 50 cents. Of course, a lot of people wouldn't buy, but then some people would give you $1 because they just thought it was a funny line, and you would only give them one. So that turned out that I had extra money for calendars that I got paid for, but they never took. So what I did was I brought those calendars home, never even thought of keeping the money, like a tip or anything. I just used that money to make sure I moved the calendars. So I gave my mother all the calendars that were paid for, and my mother was a waitress and she brought them to work and handed out Boy Scout calendars that were paid for by somebody else. But the object of the exercise was to move the calendars. So I would say, Sky, that's just the first point I wanted to make with regards to what was your first job. I think that what somebody is trying to understand is what were the experiences, or what did you take away from that?
Yeah. Go ahead.
So the next thing I'd like to say is the first job, real job, was delivering newspapers. And I remember, actually, just even now, sitting here with Sky, I remember going to the paper shack because somebody told me you can go there and get a job. And so it's really just a rented out garage where all the newspapers arrive by a big, huge truck. Any of you people who have done paper routes, I don't know, but they all arrive, and then everybody's standing around waiting to get all their papers, and you put them in your wagon or in your knapsack, and you go and do your, drop off your newspapers. But when I first went there, it's the first time I was learning or understanding what a commission was. And I remember saying I'd like to deliver papers, and they said, okay. And they were explaining however many papers I delivered, I got paid for. And it was the first time I understood commission. And I had thought I had died and gone to heaven because there was no limit on how much money you could make. When I asked how much money you could make, they asked me, how much money do I want to make? Which, of course, you can't comprehend that when you're young. Well, of course, I want to make a lot. And so they said, well, then great, you can. And that's when I understood how many papers you deliver. So then I started delivering newspapers. But again, the object of the exercise was I was now going to get paid based on the amount of papers I delivered, which means it's a numbers game. And then I realized it wasn't as difficult as that. You had to go out and increase your own sales. So what they tell you to do is to go, if you're already delivering in a building, and where I grew up in the West End, there was lots of buildings there was houses being torn down and apartment high-rises being built. And what I realized is, okay, you go to the building and you already have 2 or 3 or 10 or 20 people that you deliver to, and it's just, of course, more efficient and more effective to deliver the same amount, more papers into the same building. And so then you you took the elevator to the top floor and you walked all the way around, knocking on every single door that wasn't one of your clients anyway, customers, and you asked them if they wanted the newspaper. Of course, most people said no, and then the odd person said yes, and then you walk down the stairs and you do it again and again and again. And over a certain period of time, of course, you get more and more people and your business grows. So as far as a job goes, and that means a job, because the question was your first job, and to me that says who's paying you to do something. So that's the first time somebody paid me to do something. And I had a great experience because that taught me that there was really no limit. The amount of money you wish to make was solely dependent on how many doors you were willing to knock on to get subscribers. And then, of course, you had to follow up and be willing to deliver all those newspapers in all the rain. And it rains a lot here. So that's the first job.
Yeah, I was just thinking, well, I would say your first voluntold job was cleaning churches. How was that experience, and what did you learn?
Well, that was more or less chores. So my mother was a waitress and a cleaning lady, and she would take me to the church because she was responsible to clean the church. And I was very young. I don't remember when, Sky. But she just gave me 2 tasks to do, which were pretty basic. And if anybody has been in a church, or it could be your temple, or it could be whatever it could be, I got a vacuum and about 3 extension cords, and I simply vacuumed in between each pew and up and down all the aisles. And it took a very long time. And so that was, I guess, today you'd call it forced slave labor, maybe. But nevertheless, it was helping my mother, and that's what you did in those days. And then the second job she gave me after I had finished that, where she gave me a cloth, multiple cloths, and a lot of wood furniture polisher or oiler, or whatever it was. And my job was simply to wipe down every single wooden pew. And so I did that And of course, that kept me busy for another hour or two, or just putting some oil on a cloth and wiping it all down. So that would be the first kind of slave labor job.
Yeah, he still vacuums in that order to this day. Thank you for sharing.
I was going to add one other thing, though.
Go ahead.
The other thing I was going to add, when people ask a question, I like to be specific and accurate. And that was a job. And the first one I mentioned, that was volunteering. But the first job I had as an entrepreneur, I would say, was collecting pop bottles and beer bottles.
Pop bottles and beer bottles.
So because I grew up in the West End, as I said, and we had a lot of buildings, and at that time they were just starting to come up. A little bit before me, they were tearing down houses, like 10 houses, and then getting half a building block and building a high-rise. And what we realized at a young age was we could go out and collect pop bottles and beer bottles and get our money. So what we did was we waited for somebody to leave the garage and drive their car out, and then we would enter into the garage, go up the stairwell because we didn't want to be seen in the elevator, start at the top floor, and usually where there would be two of us, and we would pick odds and evens. So somebody would pick all the even floors, somebody would pick all the odd floors, and you would start on one side and knock on every single door and ask them the same thing. Excuse me, sir, do you have any pop bottles or beer bottles that you don't want? Some people would say yes, some people would say no, some people weren't home, and some people would say get out of the building. But of course, we just continued to knock on the next door, unless they said get out of the building, and then we go into the stairwell and just move down a floor. It happened on 2 floors. Maybe it might be 2 floors because if you were odd and even, you had to skip one. Once we started getting any pop bottles or beer bottles, we were smart enough. I don't want to waste your time giving you our experience of learning as an entrepreneur, but we had learned not to use the elevator. At first, we thought the elevator was efficient and effective, but then we found out people would see you. So always, as soon as we got pop bottles or beer bottles, we put them in the stairwell. That way nobody would see them. Then we continued down to the next floor, or the next floor, or the next floor. If you had a 20-story building, 30-story building, it was like a gold mine because you knew you were going to get some money. You don't know how much, but some money. Sometimes you would hit a gold mine. You would hit a young guy who had a roommate, and they had cases of beer that they were too lazy to take back, and they were all on their balcony. And then you'd have to call your friend from the floor below to get 30 or 40 cases of beer into the stairwell. At that point, you hit a gold mine, you didn't bother to do the rest of the building. You could take the rest of the day off. So then what we did was we walked back down the flight of stairs, left the garage, but through the doorway, left a rock in the doorway so nobody would really see that it was open. Then we went down to Supervalu or Safeway. That's what we have here. Don't know what it might be if you're in another country, but a big grocery store. And we borrowed a shopping cart or two. And then we brought them all the way back, opened up the door, brought them to the base of the stairwell in the underground parking lot, and we walked up to every single floor through the stairs, picked up the pop bottles or beer bottles and walked them all the way down and filled up our cart. And then we took them to the store and collected our money. Sometimes, if you were lucky enough, you had enough of a take that you had to fill up a shopping cart 3 or 4 times. But of course, it was well worth it because 3 or 4 times you're getting paid. And then when you had enough money, you could go to the movie theaters. But you didn't go to the movie theaters and use your money to pay. You used it to buy your soda pop and your popcorn. We never paid to go into the movie theater. What we did was we looked to see when the movie was starting. We looked to see how many minutes the movie would be for it to play. And then we figured out when the movie would end. And then we'd go to the alleyway of where the emergency exits were, and we knew a certain amount of people would leave through those doors. And if you stand there, somebody would hold the door open for you. And then we'd go in and sit there and watch the movie for free, and we had money to pay for the popcorn. That was the first job that you would consider an entrepreneur.
Woohoo! It was a beautiful story. Thanks, Dad.
That's true. It's my life.
No, I know. It's great. I haven't heard that one in such detail, but I've heard, excuse me, sir, a lot. Okay, a few questions here. When did you find your inner resilience during the early days or difficult times? If you want to rephrase that.
No. I get it. But I guess the question is, your early resilience through difficult times. How early?
I don't think you had a choice.
That's what I was going to say. When you're young and you have no money and you understand that you have to do something to get the money, some sort of effort, could be physical, could be mental, could be both. So it starts off with not really needing resilience. It simply comes from want or wanting. And you know that if you want to go to the movies, I use that as an example because when you're young, those were the things that we did. But if you wanted to buy something, you needed money, and your parents don't give you money. In my case, it was just my mother. Then what you realize is that what are you going to do to get it? And then you start to realize it's to do. There is no other option. So it's not really resilience. It was simply that there was no other option. I would say to those of you who are asking that question a little bit later in life, when you do start off a business, I'll say, if you're starting off a business, it's not so much the resilience, or you could say resilience, but you really realize that you have responsibilities to other people. Let's say you started off a business and you have a few employees. When it gets really tough, you then realize you're no longer just doing it for yourself, and you have to do it because you can't let these other people down. These people are expecting their paycheck at the end of the month. These people are expected to pay their rent, their hydro, their cable, and some people may have kids. So maybe the resilience comes from feeling an obligation to people that have trusted and believed in you. And that goes further down the chain when you have investors and partners. Then you feel way more committed to them than you do to yourself with regards to sort of resilience or being able to pick yourself up and move on when you get hit over the head with a 2x4, 2 times in a row.
Yeah.
You're staggering, but you simply have to keep going because you can't let people down. It's no longer about you anymore. So I don't know if that answers that question. But
yeah, that does. And that leads into another one. What has kept you motivated throughout the years, which I think might have a slightly different approach for you?
Mm-hmm. Well, I would say the motivation is you start off in the sense of as a business person, entrepreneur. When you start something, then you got that commitment that you have to follow through with it, but you're also motivated because once you start it, you see the hard part is done. Starting it is the hard part, believe it or not. And then the motivation keeps you going because even though you may get hit over the head with a 2x4 a few times, you realize that as you do get up, you do walk forward and you are making steps forward, and you can actually see, and it could be a period of months and it could be a period of years, you can actually see some progress. Mm-hmm. And that's what keeps you motivated, even if in the end it fails, at whatever the project may be. Even in failure, you get a lot out of it. Not just because, oh yes, you learn a lot in that, but you can actually feel that you did set out to do something that didn't exist, start a business that didn't exist, and you can actually see your motivation that carried you through actually accomplish something. And that gives you motivation to continue on even with the next project that you have an idea that you want to get involved with.
Yeah, and so when you had kids, did you ever think, oh, maybe I should get a job with a paycheck? Or what was your thought process when Tal came along?
So that's a good question. And the reason it's a good question, it's because in how you look at it. And I remember my friends working for, say, maybe somebody is in a government job, somebody else is in a big commercial job, and that would give a regular paycheck, which in a way is perceived as security, which is true. But I guess I was thinking the exact opposite, that there was no security because anything could happen. The company could collapse or the government could be laying off people. And I saw that there was no security, but I thought the safest thing was to go out there and knock on doors to get more papers or collect more bottles, because I knew based on facts, because I had lived it, that it simply was just how much effort you're willing to put into it. Mm-hmm. Aside from people that are talking now and giving you, motivation and motivational talks, which is all good. But when you rip it apart or strip it apart down to its bare essence, the paper route and the bottle collecting teaches you unequivocally, 100%, the more doors you knock on, the more people you ask, the more business you get, and the more money you get. So then I knew that was certainty. I knew I could count on that to make sure that Mom had money to pay the bills. I don't know if that answers it, but...
Yeah, that does. No, thank you. Is there one life habit you changed in order to take your business to the next level? Or are there successful habits that you live by?
The answer is, I don't know if you can narrow it down to one. I think it's a number of things, but if I were to encompass it into one, that's the question. Mm-hmm. You're right, that is the question. I would say attach yourself to or find what you would think of as a mentor. And I would say from the very beginning, because I didn't have my father, by natural course, without thinking about it, I went to sort of seek the advice or hang out with or ask questions of old wise men. Mm-hmm. Now the people listening to this would think about it as a mentor, and maybe it could be an old wise woman, of course. But it was really, I guess, if you were to sum it up, once I had that process was what carried me through the various stages, because I would talk to my friend's father about real estate, and he would start to teach me about real estate. And then one day he asked me if I wanted to sell real estate. And he explained it to me in such a simple term. Because I was already a salesman, he said to me, it was funny. He said, Matt, you don't really sell anything. You just get in the middle of the transaction. And I said, what do you mean? And he said, well, if you get a job at Eaton's or Simpson Sears or the Bay, Hudson Bay, you stand at the counter selling sweaters. Well, there's sweaters behind you, and somebody comes to the counter and asks you for a large one, a small one, a purple one, a gray one, and you simply present all the options, and then they buy it. So you didn't really sell it to them. They were already interested in buying, and you gave the best presentation you can because you're trying to do your job properly and give them as many options. What happened? A transaction happened. You got in the middle of it, and you received an hourly wage for doing that, and the company got the money. Or he said you could move up and you could sell cars. When you're on a car lot, which I was a car salesman at some point, I think I told you, you realize you're standing in a car lot and the people who come in there are looking to buy cars. So you're standing in the middle of the transaction, and people come up to you, you show them all the options, you be honest, straightforward, and tell them everything. And then they make a decision, and you get a bigger commission, a much bigger commission than you would hourly selling sweaters at a store. And then he said, or you can come and join us in real estate, where the numbers are simply just bigger. And you simply have properties to sell, and people come in the door wanting to buy them, and they do, and you show them the first floor condo, the third floor condo, the north, south, east, west, whatever it may be. You narrow it down, and then they buy a condominium for an awful lot of money, way more than any car, and thus the commissions are even greater. So I digress a little bit.
That's okay.
But I just wanted you to understand that concept.
Yeah, thank you. Well, there's two here. Well, one, we'll go into success. Someone asked, when did you consider yourself a success? First of all, do you consider yourself a success?
Yeah, so the answer is no. You
thought that.
Yeah,
Side note, I was the one who said questions for a successful entrepreneur because I consider him a success, which I'll get into after. Go ahead.
So the answer is for sure you never think of yourself as success, and because success sort of thinks, okay, you've sort of done it, and that's why I think people, whether it be the Warren Buffetts of the world, still go to work, the Elon Musks still go to work, because they're still trying to be successful at whatever they're trying to do, and it's really just a journey. And success isn't the to me, and I think all the people that I know, the success isn't something that is at the end of some road, that you've got to the end of that road. It's just a continuous journey, because even if you're in one business and it turns out to be a success and you sell the business out, well, then you're on to something else, and you're on to something else, and you're also raising a family, and you're also trying to support your wife in her endeavors. And so you're trying to do better at helping your wife with her nonprofit, or you're trying to help your kids with their homework and or you're trying to. So I would say you don't really think of it as a marker or as a point in time or as a milestone that you would think about in business, like on a Gantt chart. Success is just, I think, another term for the journey.
I agree, and I thought you might say that. On that point, I consider you a success, though, because of, well, obviously financial abundance, but most importantly, well, two equal importance, your health, you're in good health, and your family, we're a very happy, loving family. That being said, how did you cultivate that balance throughout the whole 63 years of maintaining like love and joy and
62, not 63 yet.
63 tomorrow.
Yeah, we're not 63.
You know, like but when you consider your family, I see them all as pillars, and you balance them all, and we're all best of friends. So clearly, the family's great too. What was your thought process around raising a family? And
I think that a big part of that has to do because as you said, raising the family and trying to be successful in all those corners, it has to do with the family is actually raised by two people if you're lucky enough. And so that has to do with having a partner, husband, wife, husband, doesn't matter, a partner helping you do that, or pulling you back from left field to go a little further right. And so having your partner, in this case my wife, help me reallocate time when it was needed to the various pillars, as you said. And that might be doing the soccer thing, or that might mean driving the kids to school if somebody else can't, and that might mean picking up the kids from school, and that might mean going for sleepovers, or that might mean realizing you need to pick up all 7 kids from a sleepover, and then you drop them all off at home. And that keeps you in tune with all of your children's friends. What kind of friends are they? Who are they? So that's a separate podcast in itself, because being aware of it is the very first thing that you're not balanced. And then the decision has to come. I was going to say something about a successful entrepreneur, but that the decision has to be made by that person. Do they actually want to balance it? Because a lot of people can. There's a very successful entrepreneur, and I say, in the billions, and I would say successful in many ways, and just driven and all those things for many reasons. And then in one area has been also successful in having, I think, 10 or 11 kids. And then the question is, I sometimes wonder, does he get to like all the soccer games or all the basketball games? Like, I just wonder how they juggle it. Maybe he does, maybe he doesn't. I don't hear anything about it in the news. But that would be a big thing to juggle, because it's with multiple partners. He has multiple kids with multiple partners. So great, no problem. So I think, maybe they see all of those things, and maybe their idea of balance is different than my idea of balance. So I think it's also everybody's idea of what a balanced life is what you really have to think about. And with regards to me, I realized that I had a single mother, so I had to make sure that there was 2 people, because I saw my mother try and take the job of 2 people. And I had no siblings, so I realized there was more work to be done, because it was my mother, single, raising a single person, where we had 2 people raising 3. It wasn't 1-to-1. It was 2-to-3. We better get to work. So I was more conscious of the various pillars that had to be balanced, and it meant a lot to me. And so we did what we thought was best, and here we are today.
Well, that's a part of my definition of success. On that note, is there one thing, or a couple, but one thing that really stood out? I have something in mind, but I'm curious your perspective of cultivating friendship within a family.
How do you mean?
Like, I guess a level of respect, or what I'm thinking is, because my brother, Talentation, and my sister, we're all the best of friends, and I truly think there was a huge thing of whenever we would fight, you'd make us stand at the top of the staircase, face each other, and hug and kiss and make up. So that's one thing that I think actually made us best friends and taught us to get over immediately whatever tiff we had. And now we don't really have tiffs anymore, but we're still friends because of that. Like, you made that a rule, so it wasn't just like, oh, we just happened to be friends. Was there anything else that you guys did that I wasn't conscious of to cultivate that kind of like love?
I think that the majority of that goes to your mother, and the good news is, because your mother had siblings,
right,
she knew the benefits of kiss and make up right away. And I was, so I would say the majority of that goes to your mother. And then when she talked to me about that, yes, it was obvious that would be a good thing. And then you do get over it quicker because then you have less time to fester on it, less time to think about it. It's hug and kiss and make up. And then it gets kind of stupid because then you realize, oh, we were fighting over something stupid. And I was blessed to have a mother who, although, you know, financially it was difficult for her as a waitress and a cleaning lady, I had a lot of love from her. So that's when your mother would say, you know, that concept to me, it rang true. Because what it was really just sharing love.
Right.
So even if you have a tiff, and whatever the argument was, and it can be a valid argument, sometimes it's a stupid one, like a tiff that means nothing, and sometimes it's a valid one. But no matter what, you still have to separate it, that you still love each other, and you're still close to each other, and you immediately have to recognize that. And the sooner you recognize it, the better, even for adults, right? The sooner that you kiss and make up, even in business, as funny as that sounds, the better. Because then everybody gets over it, moves on. And what you'll find is if you can do it sooner, that's way better, because later in life, you always find it difficult for the first person to make the first move, to put their arms out and say, I'm sorry.
Right.
And it gets harder and harder as the years go by. So if you can break down that barrier in children so that it's easy and it's fast and it's not an issue, and it becomes commonplace to go, okay, we had a fight, kiss and make up. And whatever you're taught, you usually take through with you for the rest of your life.
Yeah. Thank you. So on that other pillar of success in quotations, health. How do you maintain your health, and what do you do, and your mental health? Because you're a very happy person. And physically, what does that routine look like for you?
So when I was young, I was 6'4" and very skinny. And I didn't want to be so skinny, so I ordered a little magazine from one of the back of the comics, and it turned out to be good. It was a booklet, and all they sent you was a booklet, but it had all the exercises in it that you didn't need to spend any money on.
I'm going to hold it.
And so what I did was I put two chairs together with a broom, and I was able to do pull-ups. I was able to do push-ups and chin-ups and everything you can figure out, right? And squats. And then I was able to do squats holding books. So that started me off, and then I was lucky enough at just before 16, because we took a bus, a friend that was older, my friend's older brother, asked me if I wanted to go to the gym, because he said, with your height, he wasn't as tall as me. He said, with your height, you could build a lot of muscle. And then he got me working out. And the first workout, I remember going to a gym, I was sick. I wanted to throw up. And then they said, oh, that's normal. And I said, really? Because you're working out so hard, your first workout, right? So I was lucky, I'll just say this, that started me on a routine. And then after like the third one, as I heard Arnold Schwarzenegger say a while back, somebody said, are you going to keep working? And he goes, yeah, you just love the pump. You miss the pump. And so I would say that once you realize you can do a 30-minute workout, a serious 30-minute workout, doesn't have to be longer, you actually feel the pump from your curls, from your triceps, whatever it may be. And then that started me down the path of being healthy. And then you started hearing about other people with proteins, shakes and things like that. And then that sets a path for you young in life. So if you can set that path young in life, then and keep that up so that no matter what happens, 1 or 2 or 3 times a week, you manage to work out. And then, of course, if you're physically active anyway, because you love to cycle or you love to ski or you love to play soccer and all those things, then all those things sort of added to that. But your own personal one-on-one time, if it was working out, might be yoga, might be whatever it is, that trains yourself and your body that it becomes normal to keep doing something physically active. And then that attracts like-minded, which people like your mother, And then
right.
your mother being a runner, and your mother being very flexible with yoga, and then also being very healthy.
Yeah.
So then that helped enhance me. And then I became a runner, but not a normal. Now I run through the trails. I never would have thought I would have loved running through trails. I knew I didn't want to run on the concrete because I grew up in the city.
Grew up in trails.
So now here I am. Grew up in the city, and I can't wait to run in the forest. So I think it's something that the sooner you ingrain it in your body or your children, if you're older, the better. And then most likely it will stick with them.
Yeah.
And then, of course, working out in any way, shape, or form creates endorphins. I just wanted to finish because you said happy. So I think what I realized is I sometimes would tell people, I told your grandmother, a lot of times I don't work out to stay in shape. When your grandma said to me once, "Oh, you're looking like you're in good shape, Matt," or something. And I said, "Oh, yeah." And she mentioned something about it. And I said, "Well, I don't really do it sometimes to stay in shape. I do it because it makes me happy." Mm-hmm. So that answers your question. I think that working out hand in hand becomes part of endorphins, becomes part of being happy in life.
Right.
And then, of course, it's just a big cycle. And then you sort of, I don't want to say get addicted to being happy in life, but you get addicted to that.
The high.
Yeah.
The natural endorphin high. It's true. And I will mention he doesn't drink coffee either, if you're interested or not. But I'm always interested if people drink coffee or not. Thanks, Daddy-O. Mm-hmm. Back to business. Somebody asked, how do you deliver bad news to clients or investors?
Yep. Well, I'm wondering how many people are going to listen to this. We joke about it, and I say we joke about it because you have to be truthful, honest, and sincere. Otherwise, you just not even be a nice guy or a good person. You have to so you can sleep at nights. And you have to so you can just live your life. So when you have bad news, yes, you have to tell them the bad news. No question at all. It's going to come out sooner or later. So you do learn later in life, it's probably easier to rip the Band-Aid off right away. As your mother would say, do you want to peel it off slowly or do you want to peel it off right away? And that comes in different forms. I have some of my partners and staff that laugh and say, oh, Matt, we got an issue. Did you want to do the cat up the tree?
Yeah.
And so I laughed when I first heard the cat up the tree because I thought, wow, there's an actual story behind it, and that's actually how I do it. And so I think that it's just natural if you have compassion and empathy for people, depends on who you are, that you want to break the news slowly. And you want to explain maybe more than you have to or more than they need to hear, but it depends on the person. And I find that if you explain the situation that you're in, some of the background that got you there, and then you're going to try and provide the best solution. So even though it's bad news, what are you going to do about it? Most of the time there is a solution. Most of the time you just have to really think about it. Because sometimes bad news is bad news at that moment in time, and then you realize things change. Like when you listen to Steve Jobs' commencement speech, and he said he didn't know that he could be fired from a company he founded by the guy he hired. And when you hear that, then he goes, but of course now I look back and that was the best thing in my life because I was able to meet my wife because of it. I was able to start off another company that was acquired, etc. Mm-hmm. So what you realize as you get older in life that you don't mind delivering the bad news because it's part of the good news. It's just the trough in the wave. So you're always going to get the peaks and you're always going to get the trough.
Right.
You will. It's just nature. It's a must. It has to happen if you're going to ride the wave. You have to have the peak of the mountain and you have to have the valley It's just how nature is. So what you realize is delivering bad news isn't really so bad. It's not what you expected. It's not what anybody wants, but it comes with it. And as long as you've let people know at the beginning that there's no guarantees, this could fail, and everybody goes in eyes wide open, delivering the bad news is par for the course.
Thank you. Noting on staff, a general question here is, how do you assemble a team, or what exactly do you consider when hiring? Because I know you've had the same people for feels like my whole life. What's that thought process or actual process?
So when you start out as one person, say you're starting a company, you start to realize no man does it alone, or no woman does it alone, or no person does it alone. What you realize is that the best thing that you could possibly do is hire people way more smarter and way more successful than yourself in their particular skill set. So it's just like building a house. We hire carpenters, and the carpenters with the most amount of experience are who you want.
Right.
And the plumber is who you want. So it's the same thing in business. So you're always, always, always wanting to make sure you're not the smartest guy in the room, in the sense of that. It's one thing that you may be the person that assembles people, and people think, well, that makes you the smartest. Not necessarily, not at all. You're just that person who wishes to bring a team together because you enjoy working with people and you enjoy the camaraderie of teamwork. So you're looking for people, as Warren Buffett says, you can't do a good deal with bad people no matter how good the deal is. So you always need to do, you can only do a good deal with good people. So you're looking for people that you can trust, that are smart, that are straightforward, that are honest, that are sincere, that are genuine, and that are trustworthy. And, I haven't thought about it to write those down, but they're just all the things that come to my mind because of just simply, 60 years of dealing with people. And sometimes you make a mistake and you see they're missing a few of those components, and then you can decide maybe they only fit over here and not over here. But when you find the people that fit almost all of those components and they're on some sort of scale, then you realize they're all keepers and you do what you can to keep them. And then they actually carry the business further and further than you ever could alone.
Right.
And it doesn't take long to see which winners you've picked. And then some people go by the wayside. Most people do. And then the winners you kept, that's why these people that it seems like most of your life, because we all like each other.
Yeah.
And we've all realized that we're all trying to carry the load in our own different ways. Some people are good at development. Some people are good at research. Some people are good at sales and funding. Some people are good at accounting, so they just want to sit at a computer, but they love numbers. And some people are really good at legal stuff, so then you've got in-house lawyers that do things. So you're looking for people that have experience and fit that other criteria, and then you keep them. You never let them go.
Right. Thank you. So what's the key to a 34 years of a loving, happy marriage?
Well, I would say I'm trying to summarize it because you said, what's the key? And that's, of course, that's the almost impossible.
Or top 5.
No, that's okay. I would say, did you say the word compromise?
Top 5.
Oh, top 5. Well, I was going to try and summarize it for you. You asked a question, and the key would be compromise is the first thing that I would say. But actually before that, because you said, what's the key?
Yeah. Happy wife, happy life.
Yeah, well, true. Happy wife, happy wife, happy life. It's true. Or, you get it could be either way. Happy husband, happy wife, happy wife. It doesn't matter. It all works.
Yeah.
But I guess the key is, I was talking to a childhood friend today, and he was telling his son, the key actually, this guy, is pick it right from the beginning. That's really it. So you have to be able to judge for yourself from the very beginning. Because otherwise, if you don't, you may get married, fine, and you may get a divorce, and maybe that's a good thing. You know, that it didn't work out. Nobody's mad. Maybe they are, but it's good to get a divorce and move on if both parties aren't happy. No question about it. Or separate, or whatever you wish to call it. But I would say if you're trying to say it in more or less in one word, and we can go with the top 5. But the first thing is to pick right in the first place. Because if you can pick right in the first place, and that's hard because it's both parties. Both parties have to pick that it's right. And so if it's right in the first place, then it's easier to build on, because then you realize you have compromise, which you can both compromise. You have tolerance. You have respect. You have honesty. You have truth. And these are all equal. And you have communication. Without communication, you have nothing. I mean, it's sort of, that's how I feel about it. It's like how Einstein felt about knowledge without understanding is meaningless. Right? So here's a guy who's a pretty bright guy, pretty knowledgeable, and his comment is so true, right? Knowledge without understanding is meaningless. So if you're not communicating, you can't actually achieve all those other goals.
Right.
Of of tolerance, of compromise, etc.
That makes sense. But how do you judge that from the beginning?
Only through experience. So that would mean doesn't mean you have to date a lot of people. It just means that you should have a lot of, the more experience you have with people, the better you are able to judge people. The more experience you have with cutting wood, the better you are at cutting wood. The more experience you have on building fires, the better you are at building a fire. So it's really meet as many people as you can and get to understand them. That's what I would think, and I was lucky. I met a lot of people. I did a lot of socializing. And then that serves you well, because it also means you can quickly judge people pretty quick about who's going to work for you, who's going to be your friend, who's going to be your partners, who's going to be your investors. Your ability to judge people is crucial.
Right.
I don't mean judge as in condemning.
Evaluate, kind of see
evaluate them. And then see if it would be a good fit, because some people are great people, but they may not be a good fit for you.
Right.
And that also turns out to a relationship, obviously.
Yeah. Thank you. Pretty straightforward. Makes sense. Is there a quote or mantra you live by?
I would say there's a few things that always stick in my head. And, I guess the most obvious one is you eat what you kill. And that goes in many forms. Or I like it I think of it in different cultures, but I think in sort of Indian culture, they call it karma. And then I think in Asian culture, you would call it the yin and the yang.
Right.
And I think in European, or I would say go back to Roman times, you live by the sword, you die by the sword.
Right.
So whether you call it karma or any one of those things, or is it the Bible that says you reap what you sow?
Right.
So for a Christian, although I said many things, they come from different cultures, and what it shows you is it's universal.
Yeah.
And so what I guess I would say is what goes around comes around.
Yeah.
And
true.
It's not just a saying in different ways or verses of that. What you realize, it's simply just nature.
Yeah. It's the laws of the universe.
It really is. It's not just something that you hear on a YouTube or on a podcast. Once you've been around long enough, you realize, birds of a feather flock together. it's sort of true. If and I've heard some people on some podcasts say, if you hang out with 5 other lawyers, you become a good lawyer. And if you hang out with 5 of the best carpenters, so all that is true. And so you treat people well, and people tend to treat you well. Some people that don't treat you well, fine, that's good. That's no problem. You did what you're supposed to do.
Yeah.
And then they go by the wayside. And so it really is, I would say, is how you want to live your life and how you want to treat others is one and the same.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. No, it's great. Any last pieces of advice you'd give to a early entrepreneur, somebody who's either just getting started or they're a couple years in? Any guidance?
Yeah. So really, it's hard to give the advice because they can't possibly comprehend where I'm coming from, because they just haven't had the experience, right? It's like saying, okay, well, just try and comprehend being a bird for a minute. Well, like, okay, it's not possible until you become a bird, right? And well, flying, but I don't fly. And so it's true that no matter how much the butterfly tells the caterpillar this, the caterpillar can't figure that out. It's just not possible until it becomes flying.
Right.
And then it's like, oh, and then it tells all the other caterpillars. Right. And there you go, well, they can't. So what advice would I say? Well, whoever is listening, even if it's only one person, because that's what I did. I sought the advice of all these elderly men. And like I said, I would ask people, what you drive a Ferrari. Can I ask you what you do?
Yeah.
Right? So that's a really good question, Sky. And the answer is that you have to realize that it's worth starting. So if you have something it doesn't have to be your dream. If you want to try something, and it could be a nonprofit, which is the same, like effectively like an entrepreneur, you're trying something, right? You're going to create something. It could be a charity, right? Go ahead and start it. If you're not hurting anybody, and if you're blessed that you're also helping people with your product or service, whatever it is that you're doing, start it. Start it. And if you fail, that's okay. What did you learn? And start it again. And the best time to do it is when you're young, because what you realize is that you have everything you need when you're young, because people will help you. People will help you because they want you to succeed. Those people that are around you want you to read that book and be a better reader and speller. They want you to start off that business. They want to help you get more papers. They want you to sell more calendars.
Right.
That's why people gave me the money. Some people, right? They paid for 2 calendars, but they only took 1. Why? So start. I would say start. And I heard some guy on another podcast or YouTube or Instagram, and the guy said, well, Master, which is harder to get, the white belt or the black belt?
Right.
Oh, the white belt. Well, how is that possible? And he said, well, because most people don't start.
Right.
And I thought, yep, that's the truth. So the most important thing is to actually start.
Okay, well, just now one extra last thing, because I forget.
You can always edit this out, right?
Yeah, no, I'll keep it.
Or people can turn it off, I guess, when they heard
exactly. Just what's the story you say about entrepreneurs and planes going? I wanted you to tell the story.
Well, that was a line that I heard, and I saw it recently somewhere too. But effectively an entrepreneur, and it's good that you get, Elon Musk had a good one too, right? I'll repeat that. But an entrepreneur is somebody that goes up in a plane and jumps out and then starts to assemble a parachute on the way down.
No. They jump out without a parachute and build the plane.
Oh, okay. Yeah, well, it could be that too, right?
Wasn't that it?
You're jumping out, and then you're starting to build a plane on the way down. But it could be that you're going to build yourself, a parachute and survive. And don't be scared. Don't be scared because you say, oh, well, that's pretty scary. No, just understand that's how it actually feels when you're doing it. Of course, if you're starting business, does it really mean you're going to die? No, but it just means that that's how it feels. And I forgot Elon Musk's one. I think he said it's like you feel like you're chewing glass and looking to the abyss.
Yeah, I remember that one.
So, and that comes from somebody who's all in. He's put all his money in. If it's not a success, he's going to lose. And it doesn't mean that he says it's chewing glass. I mean, you have to ask Elon Musk that question to expand on it. I think part of it is, for Elon Musk, is that he also felt an obligation to all those people that he took money from. And I saw something a long time ago where he was standing in front of the people that first ordered the car, and it was delayed. And he was that goes back to delivering bad news. And he said, listen, it's just taking longer than I thought. And it's costing longer than I thought. And most people were actually pretty good. Some people were upset and, well, what do you expect us to do? But it's a great example, if you can find that video, of how he gave them the bad news straightforward. And he said, all I've done is I took all my money from PayPal and I went into it. I've got no more.
Yeah.
I've got no more. And so anyway, it's an example.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, that's great. Thank you so much for your time today and your time every day of my life. Well, thanks for everything.
That's okay.
If you enjoyed this podcast and have any other questions, leave the comments and we'll do another episode with the man of the hour answering the rest of your questions.
Yeah, if anybody has any questions, I'd really like to answer it. Because that way then they can hear the truth unvarnished.
Yeah.
Which is all you really want to know. But I can also tell you that once you've started, it's difficult to start because you have to have, motivation, all that. But you tend to think you need all these things. The answer is no, you don't. Start. Because all you have to do, if you want, is a sole proprietorship, or if you're incorporating a company, depends on what state you're in, you're spending $385 or something like that, and you can do it online. And now you have a corporation. Now you started. Boom. Now, what is it that you're going to do? You're the number one employee. Yes, what are you going to get paid? You're going to get paid whatever you're going to pay yourself. You just can't collect it yet.
Right.
So any questions, I will answer. I'll tell you that. I don't know how many questions. Probably nobody listens to this, or not that many people will listen to it that will write a question.
You never know.
Well, you did get questions, so that was good. I'm glad we answered a few.
Yeah.
I think there was a few more, but that's already long enough, right?
We answered the majority. Oh, that's perfect timing. Okay, thanks everyone. Love you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.